Hi, and welcome to Achieve for Yourself. Great to have you with us wherever you are in the world today. Every day we're pretty much inundated with data and opinions, and every day we have to make choices that steer us toward our best approach to life. Our guest today is Simone Wright, who says we often forget or don't understand just how to use our intuition to cut through the chatter and reach our inherent wisdom. She calls intuition an innate and universal biological and energetic function that can actually be used like a human GPS system to guide us toward effective action and peak performance. Simone Wright is an intuitive consultant, entrepreneur, and internationally recognized artist. She has written a book called First Intelligence: Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition. And intuition, a common word, Simone, in our language, yet there's so much mystery surrounding what it is and how we experience what it means for us. What is the actual definition, as you see it, of intuition?
Well, intuition, as far as my perspective is concerned, is it's the voice of our highest self, or the voice of our soul as it speaks through our highest wisdom. It is what we use to guide us to our highest outcome, our highest good. It protects us, it keeps us safe, but it also allows us to evolve and become the best possible people we can, based on however it is we choose to use it.
Now, there are those who would liken intuition to something on a paranormal level. You say it's not that at all. How is intuition more natural than supernatural?
Oh, absolutely. It is an inherent gift that we are all born with. It's not something that a few special people are sort of selected to have. Everybody's got it. We're all born with it. As children, we're all wildly intuitive. We're taught how not to use it in order to fit into our fabulous society that we live in. We kind of have to forget how to use it in order to function. And, part of what's going on right now, so many people are talking about it now. It's coming more and more out of the closet, as it were. And it's just time for us to remember it. And it's not something we have to learn. It's just something we have to remember.
One of the things I like about the book, and it's a great book, it brings in the physical dimension of intuition. Talk about how it's a whole body experience right down to the level of the cells.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people have the misconception that it is like you said, a spiritual or supernatural or paranormal phenomenon, but it is, in order for us to experience anything that is spiritual or energetic, we have to do it through the body. We have to do it through our little skin suit that we have. And right down to our tiniest stem of DNA, every single one of our cells is actually wildly intuitive. It responds to information, data, energy in the field, and it responds back to us. It gives us data back. And it's right down to the DNA. If we use our emotions, a company called the Institute of Heart Math has done lots of training and lots of research with DNA that shows how DNA responds and reacts to our emotions and our feelings. And so if our DNA has the ability to unwind and unwrap, then every single cell in our body does. And it's able to communicate with what's going on in the environment and relay that information back to us and provide us with data and information that can benefit us whenever we need it.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, I go by the gut feeling, and I trust my intuition, every time. But I have to ask you, is intuition always right?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, intuition, if you're listening to it, it's always right. Gosh, that's a tough question. Sometimes we think we're listening to it, and it's not quite right on. Really, part of the development is, part of the training is learning how to recognize what your intuition truly sounds like. And for each of us, it's slightly different. It feels different. But it does have a very specific feeling. So with practice, you learn how to start to listen to it more and more reliably. And every once in a while, you will sort of land on your face in the mud. And that's okay, because, really, to be honest, you do tend to learn a heck of a lot more, especially at the beginning. You learn a lot more by making mistakes than you do by getting things right, because if you get an intuitive hit, you don't listen to it and you go against it and you make a mistake, well, you're going to have a stronger memory of that error than you would if you got it correct, because you wouldn't have any sort of frame of reference with which to honor your mistake. So I encourage people to get messy. I say that being intuitive, living an intuitive life isn't for sissies. You got to get your hands dirty, and learning how to discern the difference between what your intuition really feels like and what it doesn't is really one of the major keys.
Intuition, obviously a big part of your life. How early in life were you getting the intuitive hits, and what did you do? What was your reaction when you started getting them?
Well, again, we've all got it as little kids. We're wildly intuitive. And the reason that we have it as children is because our brains aren't developed enough yet to think. As children, we sense and we feel, we don't think. And then once we hit about 11, 12, 13, that's when our brain starts to shift and we start to think. If you have teenagers, you know what it's like to deal with a teenager. They start to think. But as children, we feel it very, very naturally. And for me as a kid, mine was really expanded. I had a lot of what people might call paranormal experiences as a kid. And I didn't really quite understand it. And as I got older, I shut it off because I would get in trouble. I would go to school and I would say things that I would see based on my intuition, and I would get detention or I would get punished, and I would get into all sorts of trouble. So eventually I learned to shut it off. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I really started to turn it back on because I couldn't resist it anymore. It just sort of took over. And for me, my intuition speaks visually. I'm an artist, as you mentioned in the opening, and so a lot of how I experience the world is done visually. Other people who might tend to learn through hearing or might tend to learn kinesthetically, their intuition might speak to them differently. So everybody has their own sort of superpower. And then as you continue to develop it, all of those superpowers sort of come online at the same time, and they start to work more as a collective unit or a collective team. And then you do have the gut instinct, but then you also have 3 other levels that are on top of that.
And intuition is different than the intuitive way is different than the psychic way or wishful thinking or what you'd like it to be like. How is it different, let's say, than a psychic ability?
Well, psychic ability is a small part of the intuition. And if I can just take a second here, I'll explain what the 4 levels are. You mentioned the first level, that's gut instinct. That's the basic level of intuition. That's the level of intuition that keeps us alive. It's in charge of safety, security, and stability, and it keeps our body unit in one piece. And every being on the planet has instinct. Even the amoeba, all the way up to the human being, has instinct. The second level growing up is in the heart, and that is the ability to communicate with compassion and connection and community. That's the ability to have a heart-to-heart talk where you kind of just know what to say with somebody or in a certain situation, or you connect really deeply to nature. That's the second part. That's in the heart. And the third part up in the head is in the brain, and that does contain that psychic ability. It's, again, a very small part. The part that excites me about that part of the brain, or about that part of intuition, is innovation, is ideas, is coming up with brand new, sparkling, shiny ideas that you might have never considered before. That's the part that excites me in that part of the head. But that's where the psychic ability is as well, being able to have precognitive dreams, being able to see things into the future, being able to know what somebody's going to say. So that psychic part, just a teeny weeny little piece of it. For a lot of people, it's not practical to, want to see into the future in a certain way. They want to be able to decide what's happening, what's really important for them right now. And then the 4th level up is the universal intelligence. It's that part of us that knows the big, giant picture. It's the part of us that understands that this little bitty skin suit that we're running around in isn't really who we are, and we have so much more potential. So each of those different levels is working at different times, and sometimes that psychic ability will kick in. I know a lot of people have had those things where they've gotten the heebie-jeebies or the pricklies on their skin, and they've felt something sort of creepy and weird, and they've had a reaction, and that's part of that. But each part of those levels will serve us at different times. Because obviously, if you're running down a dark alley or you're going to go down a dark alley, your gut instinct is to say, don't turn here. your heart isn't going to kick in and say, well, let's just stop for a second and talk to the bad guy, right? It's gonna operate. It's going to serve you at different times in different areas and to benefit in different ways.
Speaking of,
that answers that.
Yeah, that's terrific. Speaking of bad guys, you did some work with the police, which is very interesting. You were offered some work by the police, future position, I guess. Talk about that time when the police basically recruited you to help them with a case.
Well, I was teaching an intuition workshop up in Canada, and I had a layover on my way back to Los Angeles. And a friend of mine who was a police officer in the town that I was laying over in, he knew I was in town, and he said he was going to come and pick me up at my hotel and take me to a scene. And he didn't give me any details. He just picked me up in his car and then drove me to this little bitty Vietnamese restaurant, spit me out and said, I'll pick you up in 10 minutes. Tell me what you get. And he came back in 10 minutes, and I was able to tell him all of the details regarding a triple homicide that had happened there. It was a gang shooting. I was able to give them the description of the shooters, the description of the guns, the descriptions of the victims, the order that they went in and did the shooting, and all of that detailed stuff. But what was most impressive to my law enforcement friend was the fact that I had the holdback. And holdback for law enforcement are the details that nobody else would know except for the cops and the victims or the perpetrators. So for me to have the holdback, that was a big deal. And so he said to me, do you want to do this for us full time? And I said, oh, hell no. No. I live in Los Angeles where it's warm and fuzzy, and I play with puppies and butterflies. I don't want to be, chasing bad guys around. Mm-hmm. And then before I even could think about it, I spit out, well, what if I could teach the cops how to do this? What if I could teach you guys how to do what I do? And he was sort of surprised by that. And he said, well, you can do that? I said, yeah, this is what I teach. This is for cops, it'll be different because it has to be very practical, but sure, I can do it. And so it took 9 months. I developed the program. I went back 9 months later and had 22 police detectives in a room for 2 days and taught them how to use their intuition. And it was to support them in finding alternative ideas to a crime, or finding different, more evolved ways of communicating with witnesses, victims, or perpetrators to handle stress better, to maintain better health. It wasn't, I wasn't going after psychic ability for them. I was wanting to give them the full picture so that they could be all well-rounded law officers and family people as well. But yeah, the idea of doing that full time for the cops was not my idea of a fun time, so I said no.
Yeah, and speaking of not taking an opportunity, you were offered a reality television show, which for many people is like the dream of a lifetime, but you had a different take on that through an intuitive hit. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's one of the things that I teach in the book. It's called Playing It Forward, and when I was writing the book, prior to writing the book, I was doing a lot of development for reality TV shows. I had been going out for a couple of years and pitching shows and having people wanting me to be in shows and things like that. And then the opportunity for the book came, and I could only do one. I just didn't have enough time, and so I did what I call my Playing It Forward, and I played both opportunities forward for the TV show or for the book. And the joke is, well, you know which one I picked because you guys are reading the book. But it's a really great tool to use when you're trying to make a decision. You've got more than one thing to choose, and if you could play it forward in your imagination, and then you feel how those things feel, then you can make a really empowered decision about which of those two choices is going to be best for you at any given time. Now, maybe a couple years down the road, the reality show might be something I want to do, but at this time, the book was what was most appropriate and most, wisest for me, and it certainly has worked out because I'm talking to people like you. So I'm happy.
Very good. I love that story, and I mean, it would be so easy to jump at that because obviously that's a major thing in society, the media, and all. But you found out better, and you went with it. And I love a story like that. And you're right.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, and that's how intuition works. It helps you decide what's most appropriate for you at any given time. Like, in that moment, doing the book was what was most appropriate for me. Mm-hmm. It's important to understand that your intuition is going to steer you and guide you based on where you are right at that moment, not where you were 2 days ago, not where you're going to be two days from now, but where you are right now. And what that does is it gives you so much energy and so much power, because you can pull all of that forward and backward time right into this moment and use it to propel you forward.
In the book, we learned that connecting with intuition is something we all can do. How does someone who's not used to tapping into this ability get started and finding a way to use it to their advantage? Is there a starting point?
Yeah, there is a starting point, and I mentioned it in the book that there are three platforms really that you need to start on, and it's an equilateral triangle based on peace, precision, and perception. And those are the 3 P's that you really kind of have to focus on. Ultimately, if you're going to use your intuition, you have to be able to approach it from a quiet, calm, peaceful place. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to go out and learn how to meditate or move to an ashram, but to be able to be quiet for a few minutes, and that means shutting off your technology. You know, when I like to go for a walk with my dog a couple of times a day. That's how I chill out. A lot of the law enforcement officers that I taught, they like to go pull cars apart in their garage. Like 3 or 4 of those guys had cars in different stages of disassemblement in their cars. They're in their garage. And just using ways to get yourself quiet. That's the first place to start. And the second P is precision. You have to be precise about the energy with which you're engaging in the intuitive conversation, because it is a conversation. And you want to be sure that your energy is mellow, mild, calm, relaxed. And then you also want to be sure that you're precise about the questions that you ask. You know, you want your intuition to guide you. You want it to give you directions. You want it to give you support and advice on the path that you're on. So you need to ask questions for which your intuition can answer. You want to ask questions that start with what or how. You know, what is the wisest choice for me to make right now at this moment? How would I be best served to approach my boss? Things like that. You don't want to ask questions that start with why, because that's not an empowered question. It doesn't give you an answer. You don't want to ask questions that start with should I? Should I marry this guy? Should I marry this girl? Should I quit my job? Don't bother. Those don't work either. Or will I? You want to be able to put your hands on the wheel of your life and take control and decide which direction you want to go, and then ask your intuition to give you the questions. And then the third P of that is perception. And that's our ability to use our intuition to feel, sense, see, to notice what we notice. Because once you start activating your intuition, you're going to start feeling impressions, you're going to start getting impulses, you're going to start hearing conversations that are way across the room that aren't meant for you, but you know you hear words. So it's important to start expanding your perception and being really aware to what you notice. And the things that do catch your attention, those are the things that you should really sort of consider following. So those are the three P's that are sort of the basic foundation of how to start. And once you get those things rolling, it starts to move like, gosh, it becomes a real fun adventure.
We live in a really heavily medicated society. Talk about how listening to our bodies can help heal us, or keep us at least in good health.
Oh boy, our bodies are so wise. It's a shame that we don't listen to them as much as we should.
Yeah.
But you know, our cells are, we've got how many? 100 trillion little cell citizens in our body, and each of them is attuned to the environment. Each of them is gathering information from the environment and feeding it back to us through our nervous system and giving us information. So part of that noticing that the perception part is so crucial. And what you tend to notice too when you start developing your intuition is your body will get cravings. This is what a lot of my clients notice. If they're trying to maybe lose a little bit of weight, or they're trying to improve a health situation, they'll notice that their body is craving something that they haven't craved before. It's never as fun as chocolate, but you know, like spinach, or they're craving something, and that is the body's signal saying, all right, there's something here that we need. There's something that we want to gather from the environment that will benefit us. And so if you start to listen to those little things and follow them, and that's the trick. A lot of people won't follow them. They'll hear the intuitive guidance, but they'll ignore it or they'll dismiss it. And really, that's 95% of the success is following the action. But your body is going to start giving you subtle little clues. And it may be in regards to health, or it may be in regards to relationship or career or money. But it's learning how to recognize those tiny little nuances that our body gives us through those cells that we're not normally used to listening to. And once we do start to become adept at hearing them and translating that information, then our body starts to function in ways that really, they've never functioned before, because it's moving so well.
We're seeing more and more of the so-called indigo children, those kids who arrive with a really great sense of who they are and what is best for them. Can you get children to tap into that inner voice early on, or at least kind of open them up to that?
Well, the trick with the kids is to just not shut it off. Like I say, you had it when you were little. I had it when I was little. The little indigos that are coming in now have it super big when they're little. They've got it so big you can't turn it off. We had it. We didn't have it that large, so we could turn it off. But the idea in children nowadays is just to support them in it. Again, because they are feeling beings. When a child is feeling something or sensing something, and it's important as a parent or a grandparent or a spouse or a guardian or a parent or a guardian to honor that, to listen to what the child is saying, so that they can start to have faith and trust in what it is that they're feeling. For most of us as kids, and for kids in some of the more recent generations, parents and teachers have shut that off. They've dismissed what the children were feeling, and what that does is it causes the kids not to trust their inner guidance, their inner gut, and they start developing weaker self-esteem. They start developing insecurity, and we don't want to do that. We want our kids to be empowered and strong. And unfortunately, sometimes that takes parents having to take a little bit of a back seat and saying, all right, let me see if my child can make the decision here. Let me see if my child's instincts are correct. Of course, you want to support them. You don't want them to drive off a cliff, but you want to allow your children to sense what they sense, feel what they feel, and see if they can take action based on those feelings with your support.
I'm wondering, in all of the experience you've had and the workshops and such, the people you've run across, do you get a lot of religious arguments against the use of intuition, and how do you handle that?
John, I haven't really. A lot of the folks who might have a religious bent, instead of using the word intuition or the voice of their higher self, they'll use the voice of God or the voice of their angels. I've never had any sort of obstacle in that way. The greater obstacle, to be honest with you, was to be honest, when I was teaching some of the cops the first time I sat in the room with them. Several of them sat in the very front row with their arms crossed, and they were very, skeptical, and didn't want to hear what I had to say. They were convinced I was going to try to convince them of some sort of voodoo. So it wasn't really the religious folks that was the problem, it was the law enforcement. But what I did was I asked them, before I started the class, I said, how many of you guys have been out on the street and just known that something was not correct, not right around the corner, or that the victim or perpetrator wasn't giving you the right answer? And they all put their hands up. So I said, look, this isn't something I'm trying to teach you. That it's not something that you already have. You're already using it. It's already something you already possess. I'm just here to help you make it better. So really, it was more the skeptics than folks with any sort of religious fever that caused me more problems.
Yeah. Well, you had success working with the police. Do you see law enforcement in general moving more in this direction?
I think so. The law enforcement officers that brought me in to teach the course, I have to give them credit, because they were pretty brave to bring a class like this into a department. But I think more and more of them are coming around, and a lot of police departments have secret psychics that they use and things like that. They don't tell too many people about it. But I know that a lot of them are they're needing to find other solutions, because what they're doing on the street isn't working. So they need to bring in more tools, and really that's all intuition is for them. That was what I really wanted to bring them, with another tool to add to their toolbox. that could help them and support them in their work.
Mm-hmm.
They are moving more and more into that idea that there is something else going on that they can use if they know how.
One final question, and we'll wrap it up. Can you leave us with one point to remember that will help us to have a more successful intuitive experience? Just one thing to take with us today.
One thing is you've got it already. The only thing you need to do is start asking it for guidance. It's not something that you have to go out and purchase or develop. It's already within you, and if you just give it the shot to guide you and lead you, it will guide you to your ultimate success and your happiest life. It's not something you have to. It's not something you have to go get. You've already got it. You're born with it. It's yours.
Great. The book is First Intelligence, Using the Science and Spirit of Intuition from Simone Wright. Any new books or projects on the horizon for you?
No, this one just came out. It's only been out for about a month, so I think I'm going to be pushing this one for a little while. I do have an intuition workshop online coming up at the end of September, and I'll be speaking in Los Angeles at the Intuition 2.0 convention. But other than that, it's just going to be talking about this book and teaching people how to use it and getting everybody wired on their intuition.
Well, thanks for helping us cut through the intuition clutter. All the best to you, and thanks for being on with us today. I hope you come back and talk with us again. It'd be great.
Anytime you need me, John, I'll be there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Simone Wright. Thanks again. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. All right, and we will be linking to Simone Wright's website at achieve4yourself.com. As we like to say, when you're there, leave your email address, and you'll get word on show developments, starting times, and such. You'll get the word on who's going to be on the program and when. You can also find Achieve for Yourself on our YouTube page, youtube.com/GeoHost, GIOHOST, youtube.com/GeoHost. Well, that is going to do it for today. I want to thank you so much for being with us. Be well, and I will talk to you soon.